that first.
Okay. Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We'll start with the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry about that.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. There we go. Echo. Thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Trustee Harper?
Here.
Trustee Petrucci?
Here.
Trustee Germain is absent. Trustee Kalani?
Here.
Treasurer Horning?
Here.
Clerk Hopkins here. Supervisor Fountain?
Here.
We have quorum of the board. We also have present Township Manager James Wickman.
Thank you. Item number 4 is approval of our meeting agenda.
So moved.
Support. Motion by Treasurer Horning, second by Trustee Colini. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Call to the public? There's no call to the public this evening. Number 6 is approval of our consent agenda.
So moved.
Support. Motion by Trustee Colini, second by Trustee Petrucci. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Move right to pending business, and we have 7A, Economic Development Council of Livingston County.
So they were at our last meeting, and this is a 3-year renewal agreement that I offer for the board's approval, unless you'd like to have further discussion or have questions. The support level is less than a 3% increase each year for the next 3 years over the price that they've held for the past 3 years. And if it pleases the board, we could continue to support the EDC and Ann Arbor Spark.
James, how many other communities are going to be continuing?
You know, I don't know. We'll know that it's early yet. These agreements, we will probably, if we were to approve it tonight, probably be one of the first ones, which, if we're in support of it, wouldn't be all bad to demonstrate that.
Okay.
Assuming that they maintain the same number of units to support. It's all but half dozen, I think, we're supporting this last 3 years.
Any questions or comments? If there aren't any, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to authorize the supervisor to execute the agreement with the Economic Development Council of Livingston County for years 2015 through 2017.
Support.
Motion by Clerk Hopkins, second by Trustee Harper. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item number 7B is Ore Valley Drive SAD funding. Manager Wickman.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. We're funding this project with funds available in the Capital Projects Fund, and this is a resolution for that interfund loan transfer and payback agreement.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution authorizing transfer and reimbursement of funds for Ore Valley Drive private road assessment.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Kalani, second by Treasurer Horning. Any discussion?
Is this resolution, is this the standard resolution our attorneys have looked through and meets all the requirements for the special assessment?
Yeah, the attorneys have not reviewed this one. This is the same interfund resolution we've used for Forest Brook and a few before that. And had previously been approved as well as by the auditors. It's more an accounting function, I guess. Okay.
Any other discussion? Have the clerk please call the roll.
Supervisor Fountain?
Yes.
Clerk Hopkins, yes. Treasurer Horning?
Yes.
Trustee Kalani?
Yes.
Trustee Germain is absent. Trustee Harper?
Yes.
Trustee Petrucci?
Yes.
Resolution carries.
Thank you. And we have no new business tonight. Board reports. Just want to make sure I'm on the right start, guy or lady. Trustee Germain is not here. Trustee Petrucci?
I just want to remind everybody that Heritage Days is on Saturday, and hope you all attend. It's going to be a nice day, weather-wise. That's what they're predicting anyways. And we're having a little fundraiser over at the Teen Center from 2 to 5. We're going to be serving spaghetti, and I'm going to make a pot, and so is Joe, so we're going to have a little bit of a variety. And it's only $5, and all the proceeds goes to the Teen Center, so I hope that everybody out there can join us.
Did we say $5 per person or $5 per family? How did we work that out? I forgot. Or is it $5 or
per plate.
$20? $5 per plate, $20 per family?
Right.
And that the meal starts at
2
o'clock.
2 o'clock, 2 to 5.
2 to 5. So, Bill, you're welcome to come out.
That's all I
You're
have.
out here. You got to come out to this.
So does Mike.
You got it there, Mike.
Thank you. Clerk Hopkins?
Just to piggyback on what Joe said about Heritage Day, down in the village, there'll be a lot of booths, kind of based on historical things throughout Hartland's history, and that'll be from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And also, I'd like to inform people that if they're interested in receiving absentee ballots for the November 4th election, that they can come into the office here and get an application, or they can also find the application on our website at heartlandtwp.com in the election section. And I expect to be starting to send out ballots by the end of the month.
So, like in my case, I have two sons that are one's out of state, and one is up in Grand Valley. Could they just fill it out online and then mail it in? How does that work?
Yeah, well, they can fill it out online, and then they can save it, and then just email it to me.
That's all they need to do. Great.
Yep, there's a place for them to fill out if they want it sent to a different address other than their registered address, which if they're not going to be home before then, they can do that.
Great. Thanks.
Anything else?
That's it for me.
Treasurer Horning?
No report other than I'll be in Chicago, so I'm sorry I won't be able to try your spaghetti.
Thank you. Trustee Kalani?
It's more of a question. I noticed there was a report in today's paper regarding Tyrone and their zip code challenges, and we also had that as an issue that came up at our retreat, because we have 7 zip codes for our residents in Hartland Township. Just thought, because
And
Semcog's
3
here,
area
maybe
codes.
they might have some suggestions. I'm hoping that we can piggyback on some of the press and issues to see what we can do about this. I think we had a 48353, isn't that what Hartland's main one is? I think we need a 48353 campaign. We need to get moving on this. Take pride in our township. I have a Milford mailing, by the way, but I live in Hartland.
Roy? So your money for your car registration goes to Wilton County?
I don't know. I don't think that that's
I've
necessarily
looked
true.
into
but
that. I
is
looked
it-
into it, and I called LaFontaine, and they said when they're filling out the paperwork, it's up to the person buying the car to check, because when they see Fenton, they may type in Genesee. And if the buyer of the car doesn't fix it, yes, it goes to Genesee. But if you're buying a car and you look at your thing and see Livingston, it will do it. It doesn't automatically because of the zip code. I called and asked that question.
All right. Okay. Anything else? Joe? Anything else? Trustee Harper?
No report.
I have nothing this evening. Manager Wickman?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just a couple things to highlight and for some brief board discussion. We were looking at that next board meeting in October, the 7th. There were some conflicts. We've talked about a couple dates. The most recent one is the next day, Wednesday, October 8th. Just wanted to see if there were any conflicts from the board on moving that meeting one night to Wednesday, October 8th instead of the 7th.
Is that good with everybody?
That's not the joint meeting, correct?
No, this is the regular meeting.
Regular meeting.
And then, so the joint meeting front, that's proven to be more challenging, of course, 7 members here, 7 members, or 6 more members of the Planning Commission. We zeroed in on October 2nd. I do know that we have conflicts, at least one conflict at the Planning Commission level, and at least one conflict here with Trustee Petrucci. Are there other conflicts, or the challenge is every other week has something else going on? I know we looked at, because the September 25th date, we have a fire authority meeting that night, and then it's next week, and it's too late for that anyway. Is it, if the goal is to have perfect attendance from the board and the Planning Commission, that could be a challenge, or we have to get very creative, or...
Does the 9th not work for some people?
The 9th is where our planning director would be out, and of course, he'd be important to that conversation.
How about the 23rd?
And then this is where the issue of the intent was to have it in close proximity to our board retreat, and before we get too far down the line with a strategic plan. If that's what we got to do, we got to do it. We'll make it work. It just may stretch out, wrapping up the strategic plan a couple more weeks.
I think it's pretty important to have us all there.
And that's why I asked the board what your preference is.
What's the date again?
The 23rd?
No, that's fire authority.
October 23rd is fire authority again? Okay.
We were trying to tie it into one of their meeting nights.
Well, if we were trying to line it with one of their meetings nights, I don't know that if they talked about the 16th at all, or somewhere in that interim.
No, we're trying to keep it as soon as
Yeah,
possible.
yeah.
Is the 16th available? Is that
16th,
your regular?
I'm gone.
You're gone the 16th.
Yeah, right. So we can, I don't know, potentially look at some other day of the week or a weekend, or
Well, my only concern is we could keep chasing this forever. I mean, trying to get 13 people with all having the same day, yeah, it'd be great if it works, but, I mean, how many dates are we going to keep kicking around?
So what date was this, what was the planned date?
9th?
This,
October
the
2nd.
last one we talked to the
October 2nd.
planning commission, I know
Joe, you're not gonna be
Foyt said he might not be there.
And you're not available, correct?
I'm out of town.
What about the 15th?
What day of the week is that? What day of the week is that?
Wednesday?
Wednesday.
Yeah, I'm not here. I
Move
leave
the planning
Wednesday and
commission
Thursday.
to the 15th, and we'll split the days. We usually meet on Tuesday, they meet on Thursday, so let's meet on Wednesday.
Kathy can't make it that day. How about the 14th?
Authority meeting?
You hear the 14th?
Is that Tuesday?
Tuesday?
We might be able to change the fire authority meeting.
Yeah, I can change the fire authority meeting.
All right.
Which
So
one?
let's do the 9th then,
No,
or the 2nd.
23rd.
23rd.
What was wrong with the 9th?
23rd.
Dave's gone.
Oh,
A week from Thursday, 23rd.
a week from
Thursday.
this Thursday. That's 25th, I believe.
Yeah.
We're talking
October.
Back in October.
Yeah, October 20th.
Yeah, I can change.
What was wrong with September 20th?
Well, we were trying to do it on a night, they may not have a regular agenda. It looks like the 25th will have a regular agenda. If you wanted to
Need an hour earlier?
wait, yeah, if you want to wait till they're done with their agenda a little bit and then go from there, I suppose. I don't know what their agenda is, to be honest, but October.
I can change the 23rd. I'm sure we can change that.
The what date?
October 23rd.
Is everybody available the 23rd?
I believe I am.
October 23rd?
If we have it that day, we'll have to celebrate my birthday.
Okay.
We're here.
We don't have to.
You still like to celebrate, huh?
Okay, October 23rd.
Very good, thank you. 7 o'clock, please, the board, or? Okay.
Okay.
6:30 would be better?
6:30?
Well, didn't you say the planning commission was going to have?
Next, on the 25th. I don't know if they'll have a 23rd regular agenda.
Okay.
Would 6:30, would that present challenge for the planning commission usually?
I wouldn't think so.
We can check to see one of those two.
Okay.
And we mentioned Heritage Day, and we will be down there with the Hartland Friendly by Nature and talking about roads, of course. So you're welcome to stop by the tent, particularly in the afternoon. we appreciate that. I did also want to just briefly mention on the farm lease on the sewer properties on M59, that is expiring at the end of this year. Of course, we have the purchase agreement in play, but we will still maintain ownership of at least one of the pieces for one more growing season and the other piece for a couple more. I had consulted with Trustee Germain, who assisted with the last one. Based on everything we're seeing, market rates for farm leases really haven't changed much. My recommendation this time is just to renew with the existing farmer for the same price for a couple more years and get us through and just keep it simple like that. Wanted to make you aware of that, and if there were any concerns or objectives, happy to have that discussion now or later. I plan to bring that to the next meeting, that lease, for the board to approve so that they can prepare for next spring.
Is there a buyout provision on the lease?
Yes. Yes,
So
definitely.
that in case the developer wants to get started?
Yep. Yep. So, making you aware of that. And it kind of got glossed over in the operational reports, but it's worth mentioning our groundwater sampling plan out here. Kudos certainly to our consultant, AMEC, who worked on that, but we just received DEQ approval on reducing our monitoring wells by more than 50% out there, and that's a move in the right direction. Thanks to the new legislation on the sodium chloride issue, but also the levels and the work that they've been able to show that, there's other mitigating factors there, and hopefully this continues a trend of reducing the number of wells out there. And then, of course, we appointed the Parks Task Force this evening. There's a few applications coming in late, and those will probably be coming back to you at the next meeting, and they'll start their work very soon. If you have any candidates hanging out there, please get those in quickly. And unless the board has questions, that's all I had for the evening.
Anything else? Okay, thank you. Item number 11A is SEMCOG membership. Trustee Kalani had suggested that we take a look at SEMCOG. We were members, was it 2008 when we...
The 2008 budget is when we removed it from the budget, yes.
We moved a lot of things from our budget.
12.5% of our budget we took out, yeah.
Good evening. Welcome.
Probably don't have to use the microphone with the...
Well, the TV people can.
Oh, TV, okay. Again, my name is Michael Sedlak. I'm the clerk of Green Oak Township and the former chair of SEMCOG. And what I'd like to go over with you is from my perspective, coming on as a clerk in the year 2000 and joining up with SEMCOG in 2002 when I became the township representative to the county. And then that moved into becoming the township representative to SEMCOG for Livingston County, which then led to getting on several committees, and in particular the Transportation Coordinating Committee, that's the new name for it. And eventually that led into a position on the board of SEMCOG, which led to eventually the chair of the board a couple years ago. I never anticipated when I became involved with SEMCOG would be so much, or that members of SEMCOG have such a voice and impact in what happens within this region. I was very surprised at it and how much each member's voice is heard at SEMCOG. In Green Oaks, particular example, we use SEMCOG for a variety of things. One of them, we've facilitated our retreat. It sounds like you folks have had one on a regular basis, but we hadn't since we came on as a board. Very difficult to schedule. Working with SEMCOG, we had an off-site retreat, and it really allowed us to focus on what we wanted to do. And as a group where each board member was heard, being facilitated by somebody from outside the organization. And we developed a plan, and look at where Green Oak is now with our walkable bike paths that we're getting a lot of positive response, and then our roads that we've been doing a lot with over the last couple of years. We also use SEMCOG to mine a lot of data for us to use in developing policies, ordinances, and goals. And we use that to deliver a quality government product to our citizens. And Amy will now continue what else SEMCOG has to offer.
All right, thanks a lot, Mike. James, if you could advance the slide, thank you. Just as background, SEMCOG is the only organization in Southeast Michigan that brings together all of the region's governments, townships, cities, villages, counties, intermediate school districts, and community colleges. And we also have an associate membership for public universities. So that's kind of who makes up SEMCOG. And we cover the 7 counties that are on the screen there. And within that geography, you see there's a wide variety of communities, urban, suburban, rural. So it's a fun group to be a part of. You learn a lot, and you get a lot of different perspectives at every meeting. Communities that are in the blue there, those are SEMCOG's current members. It's about 160 members. And the funding for SEMCOG is provided by membership dues. And we use those dues to match federal and state funds. So we are leveraging about $4 mostly from federal funding, for each dollar in local member dues that communities like Hartland Township invest in us. Upon becoming a member of SEMCOG, each community designates a delegate and an alternate to our full membership body, which we call our General Assembly. And that delegate and alternate are responsible for voting on behalf of Hartland Township or whatever community member, and kind of serves as the voice of the community at the SEMCOG table. So, and I just should mention that the dues for Hartland Township would be just a little over $1,500. That's a 12-month period of time. So this evening, with that background, this evening we're going to talk with you about some of SEMCOG's activities and why being a member really does make a difference. The issue areas in which we focus at SEMCOG include transportation, community and economic development, and water and air quality. So starting with transportation, last year SEMCOG members adopted the region's long-range transportation plan. That plan prioritizes the region's road, transit, walking and biking trails to the tune of about $1 billion a year. With here in Hartland Township, with US 23 and M59 intersecting, you certainly have a vested interest in the plans for the region's transportation system. And while I know that townships don't control roads, I'm sure it's a big issue for all of you. I'm sure the condition of the pavement and all those kinds of issues are things that you're dealing with as local officials. SEMCOG is also responsible for a grant program called the Transportation Alternatives Program. And that program provides funding primarily for non-motorized trails, but also projects that enhance the roadways and projects related to safe routes to school.
How much are those grants typically given out?
Well, for the entire region, we have $5 million a year, which sounds like a pretty decent chunk of change, but for that 7-county area, we wish we had more. Because of that amount, we try to keep the grant, each individual grant, to preferably under $1 million, so we can spread it around the region. We're in about the 3rd year of that grant program. And it's interesting to note that to date, none of the communities or Livingston County has submitted an application for a TAP grant. So there's a huge opportunity, because we think it's important that each area of the region get a piece of this grant funding. So there's a huge opportunity for good projects that are submitted from communities in Livingston County. And for our members, our staff does an awful lot to assist and make sure that the application is as competitive as it possibly can be. Moving on to economic development, we've recently updated Southeast Michigan's economic development strategy, and the strategy is organized around 3 themes: people and talent, business climate, and community assets. And there are 12 specific strategies within those themes that are shown on that wheel there. And among the strategies of particular interest to local government are shaping responsive government, strengthening quality of place and infrastructure needs, and enhancing transportation connections, connecting the non-motorized system to the transit system to roads, making sure that everything is connected. Related to shaping responsive government, we have a group of staff that can assist communities in navigating through fiscal uncertainty by looking at ways to improve government efficiency, fostering collaboration, and providing information on right sizing. This is a group of 4 people right now who have retired from previous careers and are having, I guess it's called encore careers. One is a former fire chief who actually started out as firefighter, worked his way up through the ranks, became chief, and then put together a 3 community fire collaboration. So he's kind of the expert in collaborative ventures. We have someone who retired from Ford. He did a lot of kind of quality control work and was also a village president in Oakland County. So he does some of the efficiency and right-sizing work. They have a lot of information, a lot of background together, and they will come in and spend a half day. They tend to do kind of a quick and dirty look at the issue or challenge you might be facing, help you just make sure you're asking the right questions, give you examples from other areas of the region in terms of what's being done. They've worked in probably 75% of our 160 member communities, so they're a wealth of knowledge and information. Moving now to water quality, we maintain the region's water quality plan, and as with all of our plans, we try to make sure we're doing more than just putting plans out there. We work to help our members implement the activities that, in this case, on water quality, will not only improve water quality, but aesthetics within the community and improve public access to rivers and lakes as a way of improving quality of life. We also, for our member communities that are covered by the Phase 2 stormwater permit, which I believe Hartland is, SEMCOG is particularly valuable in providing assistance on pollution incident prevention programs, and we also help our members with the public outreach requirements for stormwater permits.
Has SEMCOG done any work? We are a Phase 2 community under protest, and we certainly disagree in many principles on how that came to be.
Right.
Any work that SEMCOG's done for communities like us to facilitate a logical solution where we're not like that?
We have, and I don't have the details on that, but can certainly have our water quality expert get in touch with you and talk about where we're at in that process. But yes, you're certainly not alone in protesting that, and we've tried to be supportive in looking at, as you say, kind of a logical resolution. SEMCOG's green infrastructure vision was unanimously adopted by our General Assembly earlier this year. The vision focuses specifically on policy recommendations related to the green infrastructure network in Southeast Michigan, which ties all the components of the region's green infrastructure, meaning parks, open spaces, trails, and built green infrastructure, things like bioswales, rain gardens, those sorts of things, into an identified system. And for the first time, we in this vision, we've benchmarked the green infrastructure that the region already has, There's a vision for where we want to go, and we have policy recommendations for how to get there. On the screen is the map of Livingston County's green infrastructure, and the existing green infrastructure is kind of in the lighter green, and I know that's not showing real well. And then the darker green is where there are current conservation and recreation lands. And then there's a series of kind of mid-level or medium green colors that are potential conservation and recreation lands. And a lot of those are identified along waterways within the county. And to just kind of talk about the importance of being a member, one of the benefits is not only do you have direct access to this kind of information, but you have access to the people who pulled all this information together. And we work very hard to analyze our data, slice it and dice it to make sure it's helping you solve the challenges that you're facing here in Hartland Township. Finally, just a little bit on our advocacy work. We're currently working with our membership to develop a new legislative platform for the upcoming legislative sessions in Lansing and in Washington. And high on our agenda is additional funding, both federal and state, for improvements for our transportation system, in the entire system, roads, bridges, and transit. And our policy and legislative efforts will also address the broader local government funding issue. We think that the system for financing local government in Michigan is broken, and actually Bill is leading the effort, working with a task force of our membership to come up with some solutions to improve that system. And that's an example of SEMCOG and our membership taking the lead on an important issue that impacts the entire state. Bill is also leading the task force that's developing our legislative policy platform as well. So with that, I'll introduce Bill. You probably know, he's your neighbor.
Good evening, and it's a pleasure to be here. I know many of you, and you've probably experienced me in some of my other hats. I love Livingston County, been a resident here for almost 30 years, former township supervisor of Brighton Township, on the Brighton School Board now. So this place is near and dear to me. And SEMCOG is an interesting organization. Obviously, I joined the organization just a little over a year and a half ago. So I make that commute into downtown Detroit every morning. I leave the Myers parking lot at 6:15. I have a Hartland resident sitting in the back seat of my Michivan as I drive down into Detroit to work every day. Why don't we go to the next slide? One of the things that really attracts me to SEMCOG is I love numbers. I know Kathy has experienced that in the past. And when you go into the SEMCOG website, there is so much information to go through. I still haven't found all the information on the website. To give you an idea, nearly 1 million people visit our website every year. 1 million. One of the favorite places to go is our community profiles, where you can find statistics about your community that you probably never knew before. You will find, for instance, on our website, a projection on the number of school-aged children for the next 30 years. So might help your school district a little bit in terms of planning on trying to figure out how many classroom spaces they're going to need in the future. On here are historical information, growth patterns, just a little bit of everything you can find on this website. And like I said, this is open to you at all times. You don't have to be a member to be there to get onto this site. And obviously, 1 million times a year, all of those aren't members. But the important issue is when you start dealing with the staff behind all of this. And going into the areas of SEMCOG where we have our staff that compile all this information, that sort through all of this information to make sense of all this information, it's It's a wonderful experience for somebody like me. That's one of the joys of coming to SEMCOG. We have some really interesting people working behind the scenes on this kind of information. But, you know, we don't put everything on the website. As an example, you know, one of our chief objectives is working on the master plan for transportation purposes for the next 20 years. Well, behind that, we have to understand commute patterns. So, for instance, one of the projects that we're working on right now, as you see up on the screen, is a building footprints project that we've been working on. We take assessing information, we take aerial photos, and we work with a computer program, and we actually put onto the map every single building in every community in 7 counties. Why do we do it? Because this is what our planners use to go out and do the models in terms of trying to understand traffic patterns that are going to happen today and are going to happen tomorrow. One of the great side benefits of this is we can then take this information and turn it back over to our communities for their use. Now, for instance, if you bring this up and put it onto the computer and start running it, you can click on a building, for instance, and you can find out how many square feet of commercial building space there is within a 1-mile radius, let's say, of that particular site. You can know how many how many square feet of doctor's offices there are within that radius, or a different radius that you happen to choose. You know exactly how many homes are within that, and you can move all through this. As you get into more sophisticated areas, for instance, we have Wayne State University, because this turns into a 3D model, and you can go right down to street level and actually see the mock-ups of the building as you go through the street. So if you're a planner, you can come in and plop your design right down into the middle of this model. Where does it help your assessor? We are double-checking that all the buildings are on the tax rolls as we match up the assessor information against the aerial photography. This particular service has been a pretty big help to the City of Detroit because we happen to be helping them straighten out some of their records. It's one of the things that we can do for the members of SEMCOG. And by the way, we deliver this on a memory stick to the communities as it gets done. It is kind of fun when you sit there and you talk to somebody and they wanted to know what was going on in that building over on Grand River that was called like 2/42. And I'm going, well, that's the old racket club that's now a church. Okay. One of the newest things that have gone up on our website, and in fact, I remember as I was showing this to our officers last June, is a commute pattern program that allows any community to click on their own community, and basically what happens is it shows essentially where's everybody going to every morning. This particular chart is showing, for instance, for Hartland Township, and this is the outflows, that basically you have 8,000 people who leave for work every morning. Of that total, about 1,000 people stay here in the township, and about 7,000 people leave the township every morning to go to work. Another 199 people join me and my van passenger in terms of going down into Detroit. You can see this is just the top destinations. Each one of those little circles basically indicates the magnitude of the number of people commuting to those areas. Obviously, Ann Arbor is a major destination. Of course, a lot of people head into Brighton or over into Milford to the Proving Grounds, or into Southfield, into Livonia. They go everywhere. On the next slide, what you'll see is where people come into the community every morning. Now, obviously, you have, about 3,000 workers coming in on this, so you have a lot more people going out than coming in. But you're just like a lot of Livingston County. We're commuters. I live in a community at the corner of 23 and 96. You're at the corner of 23 and 59. There's a lot of reason why people moved here. But what it is showing is where they're going and the challenges that they have to get to work every morning so that they can still live in the surroundings that they, chose and have invested in. So those are just some of the things that are happening at SEMCOG. As we were mentioning, we're going to be putting together a revenue task force report. Kathy's going to see a preview of it in a couple weeks at the Michigan Municipal Treasurers Association, where I'll be doing a presentation on it. What we're talking about is, for instance, a study on the combined impacts of Proposal A and Headley. What did it really mean to the revenues when Proposal A was passed? And I will give you a hint. It's completely different than what most people are thinking. But we also go into the ramifications of our Constitution. We talk about state funding and measure exactly what's been going on in terms of state support to local governments. And that will be going to our executive committee in October, and then receive final approval by our General Assembly, which is essentially our meeting of our local government officials in November. And that meeting will be taking place up in the clubhouse level at U of M Stadium this particular November. So I want to turn it right back over to Mike to kind of finish up.
Obviously, transportation planning means meeting the needs for the region. SEMCOG is where the needs of the region are evaluated, discussed, and decided. Members of SEMCOG participate in the discussion and make the decisions on the transportation and projects within the 7-county area, including Hartland. Non-members may comment on the issues in the same manner as all other citizens. Heartland is connected about how US 23 and M59 impact the community. Heartland residents are also concerned about 96, 14, 696, 75, and the other connectors, and every road that takes them where they need to be. Of your 15,000 residents, 7,000 leave the community and use the road system and the transportation systems outside of Hartland Township. And then 3,000 come into your community, and they're using those roads that come in to Hartland Township. Being able to get out easy, being able to get in easy should be of prime importance to you. By not being part of SEMCOG, you're unable to represent your citizens at those tables where those decisions are being made. You're not participating in developing the regional solutions that impact these folks. We're encouraging you to become a member so that your voices can be heard on the regional level. And it's also about bringing communities together, to work together to build a stronger region, not reinventing the wheel at each community. Becoming a SEMCOG members allow you to have a voice and influence in a variety of regional issues besides transportation. Transportation issues in particular, however, but being a SEMCOG member provides resources to your community that are not available to non-members. For example, the strategic planning that was mentioned earlier that Green Oak took advantage of. So in closing, we'd ask that you consider becoming a SEMCOG member again and to start to take advantages of all that we have to offer you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
The reason I had some connections with SEMCOG for some other reasons related to my day job, but part of the thought that came to mind, because we just recently had a retreat, as well as a lot of things happening in Southeast Michigan, I thought it would be a good idea to have them come back and give a presentation. There's a lot going on in Detroit that's going to affect the overall region. And I think we forget sometimes, because we're so far out, how the region affects us. At one time, I think that when they talked about Southeast Michigan, they talked about it was Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb. But I think the outlying counties are affected by the region as well. So
That brings up a particularly good issue. Each county and each community have weighted votes. As one member, one vote, and then there's also weighted votes based on community levels. the more communities that are in a particular area, as you become, and Amy can help me on this, but the more communities we have, the more weight that we carry as a county or as our region out here, if you will. So your voice gets heard at a different level. As I go there and represent Livingston County Townships, I'm representing 4. The more, it gives us more weight, more impact on the regional issues.
You mentioned about grants, and has Green Oak ever received a grant from some kind?
You know, when I looked at that, I thought to myself, why aren't we doing that? And to be honest with you, when we were getting our road system and our paths, I do know that we had applied or started to go into that grant process, but we were so far along into what we were already doing with the road millage that we did, that we made a decision as a board not to participate in that at that particular time, because we wanted to get those finished in a rapid manner. And the grant process, it would be starting that process from the beginning, and we had already done all the work, and that's why we didn't go that way. However, that said, I was talking with our board members, and we are now going to apply for a TAP grant for some other paths that we want to do along 9 Mile Road in the next few years.
Has any community in Livingston County ever gotten a grant from some kind?
No, nobody's ever.
Nobody's ever applied.
Nobody's applied.
3 years, there has not been a single application out of it.
That's going to change.
Is Highland Township a member?
Yes.
I know that they recently, go back a couple of years, they connected a lot of their pathways along 59. Did they utilize a ramp grant or TAP grant for that? You don't know for sure? We just recently convened a road task force. It started out as a road and pathway task force, but the data that came back from our residents is that if we do and are successful in a millage this fall for our road funding, that they prefer that to be utilized for roads, but that still doesn't kick away the problem of pathways. So we're very interested in what you have to offer in terms of pathways, because that one of the surveys we've also done with our residents is the connectability and pathway connections in our community, not just our community, but connecting with our adjacent communities as well, Brighton, Highland.
And in addition to that grant funding that is available, we also have staff who can come out and kind of look at some of those connectivity issues and help you work through those. And a lot of the focus, frankly, is figuring out how to get that connectivity as inexpensively as possible. But they can come out and lend that expertise.
And a real focus on connectivity, because one of the problems is, in the past, people would have a tendency to put in a path and say, wow, this is great, look, it goes from here to here. And you ask them, well, what's here and what's there? And the point is when you create connectivity and you can get people, for instance, from your subdivisions into our great park areas, and they can get there on their bikes, that's something that's going to get people out and using those paths. And when you start connecting those into other pathways that can get them, if the governor wants to set up a pathway that goes from Belle Isle to the far end of the UP so that you can bike, and I'm sure it'll probably get accomplished, but let's just say you want to get here to Ann Arbor, and you don't want it, and you want a reasonably safe way to get there. That's what these grants are about, is connecting green spaces, connecting recreational areas, especially when you're using that kind of what is often a recreational tool.
I will say that just put in Fieldcrest, the asphalt wasn't even cool yet, and we had people using it. I am quite amazed at how many people are now using that 4-mile stretch. And next year, we're going to finish the connectivity between Hamburg Township along 9 Mile, up Whitmore Lake Road, crossover, and then connect to the Island Lake State Park. They were on the phone to us recently saying that our bike path is now putting extreme pressure on them to finish the 2-mile connection within the park. So I see that in their next budget year as well.
Yeah, my husband was hit by a truck riding his bicycle and unconscious and broke his back and concussion.
Ouch.
Trying to ride his bike in Hartland.
This helps solve a lot of that problem.
Anything else this evening?
So if we can't, if there are no further questions for them, I was certainly hoping to have some board discussion on if we're inclined to consider that membership, if we can get additional questions answered, or what pleases the board in this regard.
Well, I don't have anything this evening. Can we add it to our next agenda
For discussion then,
for discussion and have it as an agenda item for approval?
if that's what the board would like.
Well, we could, if we have them here, if we have any questions about it,
Right.
here's my thoughts on it. I mean, we just approved in our Spark, if we want to take a break at this juncture, and
It's a discussion item tonight.
it's a discussion item tonight, so there's no...
Do you work with Spark?
We don't use with Spark, yes.
No, did SEMCOG work with Spark?
Yeah, we work with them a bit, not in any kind of formal way, but on economic development issues, we have a lot of mutual members, so.
Are they a member of yours?
No, they wouldn't be eligible to be
Okay.
a member. Our membership is limited to county, township, city, village,
Okay.
those governmental
Okay, got
units.
it. It's up to the board how you would like to proceed this evening.
I think there were several reasons why we looked at SEMCOG, why we were members of SEMCOG in the past. And then there was reasons why I think we withdrew from that membership. And I think that some of that had to do with a lot of our budgeting decisions. We were going down the list of luxuries, so to speak, and I believe this was one of them. I think we should revisit, the purpose of having them here tonight was to revisit this idea. I think for the cost is pretty relatively a small amount when you talk about $1,500, $1,600 a year compared to some of the other things we do participate in, and I think it's worthwhile. So unless other folks want to table this issue, I would make a motion that we proceed and join SEMCOG.
I wouldn't mind discussing this, but my question that I have is the resource to participate. Who, as Mike, I think, said, his involvement grew and grew and grew and grew, and I imagine it takes a lot of time away from his desk in Green Oak Township. And I just wonder who that person is at Hartland Township.
And I used to be the rep and was involved in the transportation committee and going down there. There's a lot of meetings. And
I mean, the $1,500 doesn't scare me at all.
Correct, and as James and I were discussing this earlier this week, James made a good point that any organization it all depends on how much the amount you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. If you don't put enough time into it, you don't put the right resources towards it, it's just money that's being spent and no value. But I think aside from necessarily actively participating in all the committees, it's certainly I think it's worthwhile to have that information as another resource for our residents, I don't know what else more.
Yeah, and if I may, I know traditionally at the informational, we don't usually do motions, so I know if the board reaches its consensus tonight, we can put it on the next agenda if that's what the board would like. Obviously, whatever you choose. We did cut it. I have not been here recommending to you throughout the year since that we rejoin, be brutally honest at the simplistic level is that SEMCOG has not been mission critical to the many great things that we've accomplished. Having said that, obviously the most compelling argument on the table is transportation, and that's of course a big priority for us. And to the extent that we've been able to be looking a lot more through the windshield the last couple of years rather than the rearview mirror, and as we have tried to become more proactive, more progressive, a community of excellence, certainly being a part of SEMCOG and being active in that and getting the benefits of that makes a lot of sense for that. So don't mean to be dismissive at all, and I would say that if we are to become members, it's not just the dues. We need to be prepared to put in the time to get that return as well, and that includes my own time. I don't have any qualms or here to say that I would object to doing that. I just would want the board to understand that if we went back into it, my intent would be to be active in that so that we got the most out of it, and that may sometimes run up against time available for other projects, and that's just a reality, and that may very well be okay.
Time to Larry, I'd like to address your issue on time. Required time is minimal. I chose the path of getting heavily involved with it simply because I like it. The people I meet, the things that I've learned, every single time I've gone to a meeting, every time I've been involved with something, I've learned something more to bring back to Green Oak. However, it's not required. What I did have, however, was the board's support in going as far as actually getting onto the board. That was a big part of having the board support before I accepted and submitted my name for nomination to that. It wasn't something that was required. I could have continued on as the county rep, attending one or two committee meetings a month or the executive session once a month. Now that I'm off the board, I'm attending 2 meetings a month. The executive session, transportation. So your involvement level.
Becoming a member, we anticipate that our members attend our General Assembly meeting, that full membership body, and those happen 3 times a year.
Well, okay, that's fine. If no one would like to support that motion, I will withdraw the motion, but I'd like to at least
I'd like to have it be on
our
agenda item at our next meeting.
Next meeting.
Is that acceptable to the board?
Yes, we got it.
And if we have any further questions, I'm sure we could contact you and ask the questions. Okay?
Yes.
All right.
Great.
Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you in a couple weeks, Bill.
If there's nothing else this evening from the board, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Support.
Motion by Trustee Claney, second by Trustee Harper. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.